Okay,
Cool.
perfect. So, hi. Can you just do me a favor and just introduce yourself? Just so that when this is shared with the people, they can know who you are.
Yeah. So my name is Meredith Fischer. I was Stanford class of 2016 on the rowing team, and I'm currently a third-year medical student at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio.
Cool. And then I might ask the same question that I asked earlier, but what was your major and kind of talk a little bit about what you studied in undergrad?
Right. So my major was human biology. I concentrated in global health diplomacy and took a lot of both like global health classes and international relations classes. I co-termed in Earth Systems, actually, got my MA in environmental communication and thought I wanted to work in like health or environmental policy, and then realized I actually wanted to work directly with people. So decided to apply to medical school.
Cool. And then kind of along those same lines, how did you decide on your major? You said that, you wanted to work in
Yeah.
PhD, but
I've always loved biology. I remember even like on my recruiting trip, I went to like a maternal global health class with one of the girls on the rowing team and thought it was just so cool. Um, and yeah, I came in thinking I wanted to do human biology and made it through the core and just loved it. So never really like switched, but it was just an interest in not just biology, but also like the other really cool things that human hum bio classes can teach you.
cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I love the interdisciplinary
Yeah.
part of the major. And so you said that you didn't do pre-med in undergrad. So what did you kind of do post undergrad to prepare for med school applications, research,
Right.
shadowing, anything else like that?
So I co-termed and then I did a post-bac program at Mills College in Oakland, and that was 2 years. And while I was there, I did research for at Stanford Med School in the Division of Primary Care and Population Health. So, and I did that for a year and a half. And then the year that I was applying to medical school, I worked there for full time as a project manager. So doing like recruiting, writing, really got a good understanding of research and developed good relationships there. Um, Shadowing, I actually didn't do too much shadowing at all. Volunteering, I spent one summer at home in Chicago volunteering at like a rehab hospital, and I went like 20 to 40 hours a week. Like I was just there volunteering a ton. And I liked getting that like longitudinal experience, and kind of like a short condensed version. Other volunteer, like I coached rowing, middle school rowing, and yeah, those were my main activities between undergrad and applying to medical school.
Okay. And then what other options were you looking at other than med school? Was it always like once you realized it was medicine, that's kind of was the only path for you, or did you consider PA school or nursing or any of that?
I did not consider any other health professional schools.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I didn't, and I'm thankful to not have had to think about what I would have done if I hadn't gotten to medical school.
Perfect. So,
Yeah.
so you got in the when you first applied?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So what was your application process kind of look like? You mentioned like a brief timeline doing post-bac, and what did you co-term again in?
So I co-termed in the Earth Systems MA in
Okay,
environmental communication. Yeah.
okay. So I guess can you just like summarize that timeline like right before med school and kind of like how many years you
Sure.
spent with if there was like a gap year in the middle or there, whatever that
Right.
looked.
So let's see. I graduated 2016. 2016 to 2017 was my co-term year. So I kind of feel like I'm class of 27 in that regard, like
Right.
2017, like left Stanford. And then those next 2 years, so 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019 were my post-bac years at Mills College in Oakland. I took the MCAT on, I remember I submitted my primary application the day before I took the MCAT, which was like, I guess a gamble, but I like felt like it was going to be fine, and
Right.
it was. Um, yeah, so I took it right at the end of my post-bac, which a lot of my classmates didn't, but I kind of knew what that timeline was because it's like important to apply early and get
Right.
your application in and stuff. So and then that gap year I worked at Stanford, I guess 2019, 2020, and then entered med school in summer 2020.
Cool.
So
Okay.
quite a few years, but that's like kind of what I was doing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, what is your favorite thing about med school right now?
Ooh. Um, I love rotations. I love being in the hospital and working with patients. Like preclinical is cool and it's necessary to like learn all the medicine and be able to understand it on paper and test on it for step or whatever. But I just like just being in the hospital, being part of a team, working with really cool and interesting patients has been amazing. And even in specialties I have no interest in, I just like love my days. I think it's so fun.
That's so
Yeah.
refreshing. Wonderful
Yeah.
to hear. Speaking of specialties, do you know what you want to specialize in or have any idea?
So I came in thinking that I wanted to do pediatrics. Really always been passionate about teaching and working with kids, and did a lot of my research in the PICU. I'm actually on research block. It was in the PICU this morning. And then I did my surgery rotation, and I'd shadowed like ortho before because it's kind of like athletes ortho, like
Right.
that's a very natural transition, and it wasn't like something that I was so enthralled with that I wanted to go that route. I shadowed general surgery and like absolutely loved it. Felt like the abdominal anatomy, like the physiology tied into a lot of that's general surgery. So I'm deciding between pediatrics and general surgery. I do my pediatrics rotation in January, so we'll make the final decision then. But probably either one of those two. I'd be very surprised if I didn't apply to either one of those.
Got it. Okay, cool. I'm also interested in peds. I thought I wanted to do ortho, but then
Yeah.
thinking about it, I was like, I kind of just want to work with kids, but
Yeah.
that might change. And then how did you see being a student athlete at Stanford kind of play out during med school? Did you see like, parallels or kind of things that you learned in undergrad and how you translated that into being successful in med school?
I think there are a lot of things about being an athlete that make you successful in medical school. I think just appreciating the hard work and being able to show up every day. I think the accountability too is huge. A lot of people in med school that may not come from athletic programs are kind of used to like cramming the night before, being in charge of clubs that don't really do anything, or like not showing up to stuff, and just having that accountability, really caring, being selfless and part of a team. Like for rotations, I'm more than willing to do any of the like grunt work or like the stuff that will just be helpful to the team overall. And that's just my baseline attitude. And I think that comes from athletics. I also think that like being resilient, like rowing, and I mean, all sports at Stanford make you extremely resilient. Like
Right.
bad day or bad practice or get a bad score, you just turn around, you think like, okay, what went wrong? What can I do better? And it also gives you the confidence to try your best in front of others. I know like on rotations, I won't be scared to say what I think is happening, even though I know I have like a decade less of education than everyone else in the room. And then you learn more from it. And I think a lot of that confidence to fail comes from athletics, because ultimately like getting it wrong makes you learn more and makes you better in the end. Yeah. And then just like early morning wake ups, not a problem for me. Yeah. Like it's so I got into surgery. I was like, oh my God, man, it's been like a couple of years since I've had to get up this early, but like it
comes back quick.
It is so absurd how quickly that came back. I was like, whoa, okay.
That's so funny. I don't know if that speaks more to the undergrad or whatever.
I don't know what it speaks to, but
yeah.
I was just like, this is a very interesting observation right now. Yeah.
Okay, my next question is, you kind of answered it earlier, but what are you most looking forward to about being a physician and kind of like your next steps in your career post med school?
Ooh, I mean, this is working with patients and also being in charge and having responsibility for them. Like, I think that's a big difference for me, and why I ended up applying to medicine was wanting that responsibility and wanting to learn how to make those decisions to better people's lives. I'm also, I mean, if I'm going to surgery, I'm really excited to operate. I think that'll be super cool. I know it's super cool, and that's maybe why I want to do it. And then for pediatrics, I'm excited to have the potential to impact people's lives over decades. Like this, I think that's just really alluring to me about that specialty. So we'll see. Yeah.
Cool. And then kind of shifting gears for my last two-ish questions is the first part is biggest challenge like applying to med school and kind of like, I think especially at Stanford, there's a lot of stigma with like grades and everything and kind of like, getting over the mental part of applying to med school is my first part of the question. And then second part of the question is just since being in med school, toughest challenge there and how you've kind of dealt with that.
Okay. My biggest challenge by far applying into medical school was like my GPA in undergrad. I'm sure like that probably rings true for a lot of people applying out of Stanford. And I mean, I would like, I worked with Kathy Wright and like talked to other doctors about how to frame that in my application. And ultimately I think I had a good answer and did well on the MCAT. I knew that was going to be like huge for me to show that I was academically able to do it. But I do know that that was my biggest hurdle for sure. But like, it's a hurdle that you anticipate and you just like craft your story of like, look, like this is what I've done since. And biggest hurdle in medical school. I'm trying to think of something that'll be applicable. I mean, M1 year was super tough because that was all remote, but that's not really like, yeah,
Right.
that, I think my biggest hurdle, but also that I had advice about early on, which I, from actually like another old teammate of mine who's a resident now, was just the like amount of information that you're like that's thrown at you, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed and like you want to stay up all night and learn it all. And like, I don't know, you most classes are pass fail and you like study your ass off and hope to pass. And so that was an adjustment. But one thing that she told me was like have a hard stop on your studying for the night. So it was, for me, it was always like 9 p.m. because I'm kind of a grandma. But yeah. But and that helped because like helped you keep up. And then she's like, you're gonna see like the first time you were tested on this material, you're going to be tested on it again and again and again. Like the human body is the human body. Like, yes, we learn new stuff about it every day, but the basic biology is the same. So just like realize that this is like exposure and understanding over time. And so that allowed me to overcome the hurdle of feeling like super overwhelmed by all the material. It's like, do your best and know that like, this is a lifelong career of learning and 4 years of medical school. So work hard, but don't make your life hell because it's not worth it. There's no way. Yeah.
That's wonderful advice. I was just going to ask if you had any other advice, but I feel like that's amazing.
Yeah.
Even in undergrad, I feel like so many kids, at least that like, and even myself, like just going through school and realizing that like a lot of classes kind of cover the same information, just like a little bit more. So there's no need to freak yourself out over things. If it doesn't click the first time, it will the seventh or eighth.
Yep. And then honestly, seeing in person makes it click so much more. Like there are things I like, you just remember you had a patient with that. You're like, oh yeah, I had to do all this research on it. And remember that patient.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Are you currently doing research in medical school right now? Is that?
Yes. So at Case Western, we have like different research blocks. So I'm at like the week 8 of my 8-week research block. I'm still including another week to finish, but I'm working in the like pediatric intensive care unit on like bronchiolitis, which actually, if like you've been reading about RSV and stuff, like the random project that I came up with, it's become super relevant. And then just other side like data collection projects on also bronchiolitis. I'm doing some like trauma surgery research, both like in adults and like pediatric disaster research. What else? I did a project on like a child psychiatry project for like kids with whose parents have substance use disorders. So yeah, I think I found it really like engaging and feel like I found a good medium of where I'm like excited about my projects, but not super overwhelmed and not like 17 projects at once.
Cool. Very cool. Well, that was all of the questions that I had on here, but one of my questions that just kind of came up
Yeah.
while I was just listening to you, what do you do to kind of just, unwind? I don't know if you still row or what do you kind of do like outside of medicine, outside of anything
Yeah.
academic to balance the stress of med school?
Yeah. I think a big, I want to say got into run, get into, but I do run like 5 to 6 days a week now. I started doing it in the pandemic because everything else was closed, but then it like there's a big community of med students that do that. A lot of former athletes will just like go and run. It's great for my mental health. I like getting faster and going farther, but also if I don't go faster or farther, I don't really care.
Right.
Right. So that's a big thing that I do. I also really like to cook. I've got like I like to always cook like a nice meal 1 day a week, which is like a good relaxer for me. What else do I do for fun? Not much else.
Yeah.
Those are the big ones. But yeah, I would say like for athletes finding something that I didn't realize how much rowing was like important for my own like mental health because like you think it's the bane of your mental health when you're in it, but like the actual physical act of exercising and the hormones and the like endorphins or whatever are really important to keep in your life in whichever like manageable way possible, in my opinion.
Cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like whenever we have like winter break, because I don't know if the rowing team was still the same way, but we are pretty much off for like 6 weeks in the winter, and every time it's like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Like I have to erg
Yeah,
for 6 weeks.
yeah, no,
Um, cool. Well, I don't have any other questions, but do you have anything else that you want to add? You briefly touched on advice earlier, but anything else just to say to anyone thinking about venturing into med school or any of that?
yeah. I mean, good luck. If you have questions, I think you all will be strong applicants. And this is a like we didn't have anything like this when I was applying. So whether or not you're pre-med in undergrad, you can like find your way and market like the wonderful things that you've learned from being an athlete in college. So
Cool. Let
all
me
right.
stop the recording really quickly if I can find it.